Hey y'all, welcome back to New Slang. I'm music journalist Thomas Mooney, and this go around, I'm joined by singer-songwriter Joe Pug. And of course, Joe hosts the Working Songwriter, a phenomenal podcast where he has a wide range of guests come talk about songwriting and the craft. I highly encourage you all to go check out the Working Songwriter if you haven't just yet. Joe also just released a new album this past Friday called The Diving Sun. There's really an interesting build-up for this new album that isn't a typical path for a new album. He originally thought his next record would be a collection of B-sides, but he soon realized that there was something deeper that connected these songs. There was a blueprint of a new album within. So he updated some of those older songs and wrote some more, and eventually that became The Diving Sun. I will mention something that Joe's done differently with this album as well. So if you go buy The Diving Sun over on his website or on his Bandcamp, you will get the full record. If you're just streaming the album, you're only going to be getting side A, which is the first 4 songs for a while. And then eventually side B will be coming out, which I believe is June 4th. I really dig this model of releasing. I think it puts so much more power back in the hands of the artist. Not that you needed more incentive to go out and buy a record, but maybe this is like that push that gets you to go to Joe's website or go to his Bandcamp and buy the record, so you'll have the entire thing. And of course, you'll be directly supporting Joe. Anyway, I really enjoyed The Diving Sun, and I think you will as well. We go into some of the building up of that record and the writing of the album, as well as touch on a few technological things that are happening in the world of art and commerce right now, as well as touch on some of the inner workings of the Working Songwriter. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Soto. If you're asking yourself what exactly Desert Door or a Soto is, well, it's a premium, high-quality spirit that is similar to a tequila or a mezcal, but in my estimation, it's more refined, smooth, and fragrant. It has a distinct and intriguing palate that picks up on hints of vanilla and citrus while maintaining a healthy earthiness that is quite enjoyable. One of my favorite features about Desert Door is just how versatile it really is. If you want to feel fancy and a little highbrow, it's perfect for a variety of cocktails that call for lime wedges and coarse salt, chopped ginger, agave nectar, sprigs of thyme and sticks of cinnamon. If you're down to muddle some fresh fruit, all that kind of stuff, it's perfect. It's great for experimentation and fine-tuning all of your mixologist skills. And then also, if you're a little bit more down home and casual, you got that denim jacket on. It's just perfect for those short and sweet, simple go-to favorites that hit the mark every time. I'm talking about ranch waters and Moscow mules and palomas and Mexican Coca-Cola with Desert Door. What I love so much about Desert Door is just how genuine and authentically West Texan they are as well. They go out and harvest Soto plants out in the wild and are aware and knowledgeable conservationists at heart. So next time you're at your neighborhood liquor store, get yourself a bottle of Desert Door. I'll throw a link into the show notes for more information. If this is your first time listening, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're over on iTunes, leave a 5-star review. Be sure to stop on over at the New Slang merch store as well. I just added some coffee mugs and shot glasses the other week, and they are flying off the shelves. Be sure to get yourself one. Stop on over at the Patreon as well while you're at it. It's a great way to support this podcast and journalism in general. For as little as $3 a month, you can get ad-free episodes, monthly merch, and more. All these links, they will of course be in the show notes. Also, late last week, I announced that my first book will be coming out later this year. It'll be out before summer. It's going to be a short collection of sketches and vignettes about the Lubbock music scene. It's going to cover a very short period of time, about a 2-year stretch from 2015 to 2017. By no means will this be my end-all be-all book about my time here in Lubbock, but it'll be a nice lead-in. I'll of course have a lot more details and info on the whole matter soon, but for right now, I'll just leave it at that. All right, let's get on into the episode at hand. Here is Joe Pug. I guess let's start off with the obvious. You have this new record going to be coming out here in just about a month. And, I guess what I've read is that it kind of started out as like an idea of like collecting B-sides and archival kind of material, and at some point you kind of realized that there was a common thread and a common theme, and that you wanted to expand further on that. I guess, like, at what point did you kind of realize that there was that common thread and that you needed to go in that direction versus more of an odds and ends type of collection?
I realized it pretty soon on. I had chosen about 2 or 3 songs from past recording sessions when I realized that there was sort of a through line, that it was definitely a record about young love, about courtship, about excitement and disappointment when it comes to falling in love. And so after, choosing about 2 or 3 songs that all kind of had that in common, that's when I knew that that was the direction that the record was going, and that it wouldn't just be a B-sides record, which basically just means, here are the 8 to 12 best songs that I recorded over the last decade and didn't release. But they might not have any through line going with them.
Yeah, I find that really interesting right there. As far as I feel like a lot of artists have that 1 or 2 songs that during any time they're making a record that end up not being recorded, or like they get cut last minute, all that kind of stuff. How often is it where, like a song like that just is kind of like tapping you on the shoulder, constantly going, "Hey, do something with me"?
I wouldn't. For me, it's not too often, because songs that are good or above average are so hard to come by that when you have them, you tend to just release them as soon as possible. I don't know anyone who's so prolific that they can afford to leave a bunch of stuff on the cutting room floor. I'm certainly not one of those artists, but I'd say where most of my stuff gets left behind is in the writing room. Like I just, anything that we end up taking to a studio and cutting with a band, most of that ends up getting recorded and put onto an album. But a lot of the stuff that I leave behind is just in a notebook here or there, and that type of stuff I'll revisit months later, weeks later, years later.
Yeah, I always find that really interesting too, as far as like when you go back and revisit a notebook like that. And if you do you ever like obviously that can inspire a new song or something like that. Have you gone back though and like, you know, kind of like is it also one of those things where sometimes you realize, oh, I can put these parts together and I can like these 3 like kind of okay so ideas. There's something in there that if you put them all together, there's a better song out of that. Does that ever happen right there?
For me, that doesn't. I tend to think that mediocre ideas are just mediocre ideas. What usually ends up happening is I'll have what I consider to be a pretty good idea, but I just don't know how it fits with anything that I'm working on, at the time. And I wonder where the hell the idea even came from. And it just seems so strange that it showed up. And then, months later or years later, you'd be working on a project, and I'll go, holy hell, that's exactly where it fits. I can't believe I had that idea before and it works perfectly here. So I think a lot of your best work as a writer is usually going on, for lack of a better word, subconsciously. And maybe it's your job as a writer to just be, to have your facility sharpened enough where you can catch it when it's time.
Yeah, I love that right there, because I think sometimes we focus too much on the songwriting as being right when you pick up that guitar, right when you pick up the pen and start writing. And I guess like in my experience with talking with people, you realize so much of that writing, so much of the creative process is but way before that. It's way before you ever actually do any of the I guess the physical work, if you will. It's always way more about the moments that all that has just been kind of stewing up in the mind, and you're kind of putting those puzzle pieces together and really letting it marinate.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I made, well, not if I made, when I made a bunch of mistakes, in my 20s creatively. I think one of the main mistakes I made then was spending too much time in the quote unquote writer's room in writing mode with the guitar in hand, with a composition book in hand, and not enough time just taking walks, going through the woods. Definitely it would have to be time not spent on a device of some kind, because that's pretty useless. But any other time that you just engage with the world and a device isn't present that's connected to the internet, I think it's going to be just as useful for getting songs as sitting down with the guitar in hand.
Yeah. Well, how has that been for, like being able to instill that practice for this past year where we have kind of been stuck at home? And I know like so often songwriters are inspired by stories they hear on the road, or they are inspired just by being out and talking with people, obviously, and having experiences in real time. How has that been able to, I guess, translate for this year for you? Have you been able to simply like create and write?
Yeah, I'm not a writer at this point in my life where I'm getting too much inspiration that way. I think I'm writing about a lot of experiences I've already been through. I find, I have young kids now, and I'm always doing things with them, and I get a lot of songs written in my head when I'm just hanging out with my kids. Because when you're hanging out with kids, you're just on a playground or walking through the woods with them, and they don't really need you. You just have to be there to make sure that they don't die. You know what I mean? And so you're just taking a walk. You're being present with your kids, and I tend to find that a lot of ideas come then.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for me. Like, obviously, I'm not a songwriter, but I know that when it comes to writing something about someone else, if I'm thinking about analogies or thinking about ways to describe an artist, that stuff usually comes when I'm doing, tasks that are folding laundry, or like doing the dishes, or like walking the dog and stuff like that, where you don't have to be necessarily present. It's all routine.
That's exactly it. Raking the leaves, cleaning the gutters, cutting the grass, whatever, all that stuff. That is great for getting creative work done, I believe.
Yeah, I always had like a problem, I guess, as a kid where, like my dad always thought like I was just daydreaming all the time, where, I wasn't doing the tasks at hand quick enough for him, because, he owned for a little bit of background information, he owned a trailer company, and, so during the summers working out there, I guess like the old time is money and all that stuff. And, I feel like that kind of thing for me, like I was always just kind of, I guess like the daydreaming aspect was always frowned upon by my dad. On my mother's side, though, a little bit more creative. She was a teacher, an English teacher. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of songwriters, especially like I guess in the modern world here, a lot of times in life, we kind of like try and, I guess like a lot of times it can be dampened, that creative aspects, or it can be mischaracterized as daydreaming versus actually just thinking. And, did you ever have any like problems, or not necessarily problems, but did you ever have anything like that growing up? Did you ever feel that you were like a daydreamer, that you spent a whole lot of time in your head or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Like as a kid, I didn't, I don't know that I had too many like problems with it, or if I did, I was blissfully unaware. But yeah, I mean, definitely I had a really active imagination as a kid. I feel really lucky to be part of what my wife and I always call the Goldilocks generation, in the sense that we were born without internet, and now we have all the great parts of the internet that are available, but we had a whole childhood where devices weren't available. And so, I mean, there's just, for people who were born, 1994 and after, all you folks missed a great world where you just weren't on a device all the time, and you were bored. And so that boredom usually led to having to entertain yourself just in your mind, and so that's something I try to be conscious of to a certain degree with my kids. Obviously, it's a new world, so they have to interact with technology to a certain degree, but I try not to just shove devices in their faces all the time. You know what I mean?
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by Hot Damn Coffee. Rolling in from the hills of eastern Tennessee is Hot Damn Coffee. It's a down-home company that roasts single-origin, high-quality coffees from around the world. Their year-round roasts come from certified farms in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Nicaragua. Check out the Hot Damn website over at hotdamn.coffee. There you can find more info on their operation and roasting process and some helpful tips on how to brew the best cup of coffee. They've certainly made my mornings that much better. And to be perfectly honest, I enjoy a nice cup of coffee at all hours of the day. Some of my favorites have been the Tanzanian pea berry in medium roast and the medium roast of Nicaraguan with the honey process. While there, check out their Hot Damn Coffee Club, which is a monthly subscription service. With the holiday season coming upon us, it's just really kind of the perfect gift. I don't care how difficult or easy a person is to shop for, they'll always be good with items like high quality coffee. And of course, right now, if you throw in the promo code SLANG in all caps, that's SLANG, you'll get 20% off your order. And if you're signing up for the Coffee Club subscription service, they'll take 20% off that first month and also throw in a bonus 8-ounce bag of their Nicaraguan coffee. Again, that's SLANG in all caps. Head over to hotdamn.coffee and sign up today. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, that can be so easy. I mean, I don't have kids, but I can understand, especially when it's around like the holidays and stuff and I'm around other family members with kids. It's very, very tempting that to give them a device to occupy them. So
Yes.
they're not quote unquote bothering you. And
Yes.
I think sometimes like that's just, I mean, I empathize with that, but at the same time, I wonder what kind of, if there was a little bit more engagement or a little bit more, being a little bit more proactive in not necessarily using those as crutches, those devices as crutches would help out more.
Yeah. I mean, and like, I'm not even as good of a parent as like, I'm telling you, I give them other activities to do. I think that's what a really good parent would do. I'm just like, man, go pound sand. I don't care. You're not watching an iPad right now, so figure it out. I don't care what you do, but you're not doing that.
Yeah. That's I guess like what my mother would always say too is, if, and I guess like a little bit of my dad too is like, if it would be, the phrase "I'm bored." I mean, like anytime I said that, like I've quickly learned that, don't mention that because
No.
they're going to give you something to do.
Totally.
I guess like I bring all that up just to tie it back into, because I was going to ask, like, is that something that you had to work on as far as like understanding that daydreaming wasn't a meaningless task, that all of that kind of was part of the process, and that it did help, it may not like make you where you write a new song today, but it can help you down the line for more songs and more, ideas.
I guess I didn't have a problem integrating it that way, because I never looked at it as a problem before. So I didn't ever feel like it was something I had to give myself permission to do. You know what I mean? I always just found it enjoyable, and it wasn't holding me back in other ways, or it wasn't holding me back in other ways that I was aware of. So I never looked at it as a vice. So I never had to give myself permission to do it.
Mm-hmm. Going back to this new record, did you, I guess like at what point did you also realize that you, did you realize that you had to like maybe do some tweaking on some of those old songs and update them to make it a little bit more uniform, to keep the idea a little bit more attached together?
Yeah, I started pretty aggressively remixing the old songs before I even decided it was going to be something other than a B-sides record and started adding stuff. I, uh, I quickly realized that a lot of the songs I liked didn't make it onto albums because I didn't like the arrangements on them. So I'd do things like I'd go in and I would knock out everything except for the vocal and go back and put in, new piano, strings. I think a couple of times I could put drums in a song or two. And so that's what I did first before writing anything else. And then once I had a couple of songs like that I dug and that I thought were going to be part of the record, that's when I started to write a few songs for the album.
Yeah, you released that first single, Crescent Bridge, a couple weeks back, and that thing it just has that anthematic summer kind of Springsteen feel to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really loved the feeling of that song, and there's a little bit of that rush of that song. I feel like we've obviously kind of been in this lost year in a sense, and I don't know. I feel like there's, we're I guess like kind of hopefully turning a little bit, and I feel like there's a little bit of, maybe this is just me playing or like reading into it some, but I do love like there's that sense of summer feel coming to us, and I don't know. Does that make any
Yeah,
sense?
well, every time you put out an album, you hope that it catches the cultural zeitgeist in some way. So if my if that song were to catch the zeitgeist of people getting over the coronavirus, then that would be great. It'd be great for me.
Yeah. Well, to to transition a little bit, I mean, you have the Working Songwriter podcast, and it feels like, especially this last year, you've done. I guess at the very beginning, that was like a once a month
Hmm.
episode type of podcast, but as this has gotten more, it feels like there's episodes every week, and there's a little bit more of a focus on the release schedule, a little bit more on that side. You know, for
Hmm.
you, like as a songwriter and as like the curator of this podcast, and was that something that was always like intentional from the beginning, that you wanted to ramp up as far as the episodes go and getting them out a little bit more quicker at a faster rate?
No, it wasn't. That was entirely COVID related. The podcast, to be completely honest with you, was something that I loved doing, but it was kind of like a hobby for me, and it was a hobby in the sense it was like a hobby where I could also advertise my tour dates to listeners. You know what I mean? And then when COVID hit in March, I don't know what made me be more threat sensitive than most of the other musicians I knew, but I knew that I just knew I had a really strong sense that it was going to be a long time before we were all back on the road. I felt like, I had friends that were just like, well, I postponed my gigs for a month, and I remember thinking like, man, if we're back in the fall, we'll be really lucky. And here we are a year later with no shows in sight. So when I thought that it was going to take a long time to get back, I started thinking to myself, what are some of the ways that I could, you know, uh, keep things going, make some revenue. And I thought, well, I can do the podcast from home. And so I ramped it up to a weekly schedule. And I think I'll probably keep it here because I like doing it. I do like doing it this much. I figured out how to edit the episodes a bit more efficiently. I've gotten better at that, so I can do it probably twice as fast as I used to. So now it only feels like twice as much work rather than four times as much work. And I really like doing the show now. So,
Yeah, I think that's like a part of it where, I've told a couple of friends about this as like, I went to school to be a print journalist, and then, you know, um, we're in 2021. It's a different kind of world. There's not as much print work, and had I known that I needed to take some like extra classes for, engineering aspects, I probably would have, and
yeah.
there's a lot of other stuff that you don't necessarily realize. Oh yeah, I don't know actually anything about this, and yeah, the editing aspect, the just recording. Of course, you find all these little tips and tricks along the way. YouTube videos are very, very helpful. But yeah, I feel like a lot of times people don't realize all the like talking like this, like 45 to an hour. That's the
Mm-hmm.
easy part for me. I love talking with artists. I love talking with songwriters. It's all the other stuff that is like, man, I didn't know this was going to be part of it. But as you said, instead of being 4 times the work, it's only half. This episode is brought to you by Wild Gallery. Based in Austin, Texas, Wild Gallery is Austin's only art gallery featuring Native American art. Head on over to wyld.gallery to see their vast array of traditional and contemporary art by Native American artists. Currently, they are a virtual gallery. You can still make appointments on their website if you're wanting to purchase a specific painting in person, but of course, the beauty of them being virtual is that you're able to see and buy from your home without trekking all the way to Austin. While New Slang definitely focuses on music, I always love speaking with songwriters about those other mediums that they explore. Often that's through painting and drawing, the visual arts. And since I'm a West Texas native, I've long been drawn to the history, the stories, traditions, and heritage of Native Americans, especially those that were out here in the Western frontier. And that is what's so great about Wild Gallery. All of the artists featured are Native American, and they are telling stories about Native Americans. If you scroll through their collection, you'll see a wide range of styles as well. There's definitely some American West and some bold pop art. There's more of that traditional fine art like oil on canvas, as well as those that are influenced by Native American traditions. My parents, they always had paintings hanging around the house or their offices that were inspired by West Texas and Native Americans. And now I do as well, especially here in my office, which I'll let you guess where the latest print is from. As a journalist, I do feel like the most intimidating part is staring at a blank white page. And of course, you don't have to be a journalist to be staring at a white blank page. I know a lot of y'all do that. What I'm saying though is don't let your walls suffer from that same white blandness. Go visit Wild Gallery. I guarantee you will find something that moves you and that you'll want hanging in your home. Again, that's Wild with a Y. Go visit wyld.gallery. Links will be in the show notes as well. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, and I think it's in any creative job, it's your job to stay up to date on the mediums that listeners or readers are flocking to themselves. It's not the reader's job to conform to like what medium you like to work in as the creator. It's your job as a creator to take your work and put it into a medium where people are excited about consuming it. And I think that's not going to change. And it's not like it was 50 years ago where people would gravitate to one medium and that medium would stay relevant for 2 decades. Now we're watching it switch even faster. I just read an article yesterday that a listener sent me about this new thing for digital media called non-fungible tokens. Have you heard about what this is?
No, I have not.
Basically, long story short, I'm going to get ready to do a podcast episode about this, but long story short, it allows you to authenticate through blockchain technology. It allows you to authenticate the original digital file of a work of art. And so basically what that'll allow you to do is like, yes, you can make copies of this thing and copies of it, but you will be able to tell through blockchain technology what the original file was. And with that being the case, just like a trading card would gain value over time, like a LeBron James rookie card would gain value over time, these original copies with non-fungible tokens will become more valuable. So what some artists are starting to do, and this is in the electro world right now, but it'll come to our world soon, is they're starting to auction off the original digital copy of an album, and people are paying tens of thousands of dollars for it. And now, granted, that's for very, very popular artists, so it won't be the case for everybody like that, but there is going to be value there. And the larger point that I'm trying to make is it's incumbent upon artists to educate themselves about this new technology, about these new mediums, so that they can monetize their art, so that they can take it to people in mediums that they're excited about interacting with and purchasing.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. That's after you've explained it, I've not heard it in that way, that capacity, that way, that channel, but
Mm-hmm.
something that is happening, and I feel that it's the exact same thing, is they are now doing like virtual sports cards, and it'll be
Yes.
like a highlight reel essentially. And
Yes.
I've heard about like these like going for ridiculous amounts, and it's a wild concept. It's really, really interesting.
Well, and I think one of the most interesting things is think about people who let me think off the top of my head, like a super famous meme, like the Michael Jordan crying meme. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like think about the originator of that. If they had been able to put a non-fungible token on that meme, then you start to get rewarded for things going viral at that point, because at a certain point, people will be able to tell who created that content. And I mean, it sounds weird, I know, but also 5 years ago, when my younger nephews were explaining to me that they like to watch other kids play video games on YouTube, and I was like, "You're mental! That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And now the most famous people in the world are YouTube streamers. It's like this stuff gets not it gets serious really quickly. You know.
Yeah. I have some little cousins who absolutely loved watching like people build Minecraft stuff on YouTube, and
Exactly.
I'm like, okay, well that's really weird, but yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, like I've seen a couple of series on YouTube of them finding people who became giant memes, and you don't know any of their names, and it's like they've basically gone back and like caught up with them as far as like how did this photo become this photo, and like when was the first time you were aware that somebody was kind of or not kind of was using it to as a meme. And I think like what I love so much about those kind of videos is it does humanize that person clearly. I mean, like I think like we tend to think of it just as being a meme and like just not being an
Yeah.
actual person. And yeah, that's really, really interesting. I'm gonna have to look further into that.
It's just starting, and I think if you I'll email you the two articles I've read on it. I'm not pretending to be an expert on this. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
what I just explained to you is like the sum total of my knowledge on it. I'm just using it as an example of the need to be. You're not the Rolling Stones in 1962 when records are going to be the dominant medium for the next 30 years until CDs come out. Like it's different than that. Things are moving a lot faster than that, and people have to be, particularly creators. You got to be with it, or your work is never going to be consumed, or it's going to be consumed, and someone else is going to be the beneficiary of the monetization, and that's almost even worse.
Yeah. Another little technology that I've seen you use, and I've been using it for a minute too, is Clubhouse. And
Mm-hmm.
I saw you in a room earlier this morning that someone had asked me about podcasting and how Clubhouse was affecting that, and I was kind of saying how early on I was kind of worried, like, oh, is this going to take over podcasting? Is this what is going to happen to like my kind of podcast, which is not like it's not Joe Rogan or anything like that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've realized, like, as I was kind of saying when they asked me that, was it's just another tool for kind of promoting the podcast, and I think like there's other things that we can do with it as far as having kind of the live show, if you will, the reaction podcast, or obviously it's a great way to have questions in real time from an audience.
Yes.
What have
Yeah. I
you?
mean,
Yeah, go ahead. Like, what do you think about it in this, these first couple of weeks that you've been engaged with it?
Well, I tell you what, about at the end of last year, I I decided I was going to delete my Twitter account because I just really thought about it, and I was like, you know what? Every time I'm on the Twitter app, I'm just sad, angry, bummed out, jealous, envious. It's just a horrible place to be. I think different apps and different mediums bring out different sides of people, and I just hated Twitter. So I got rid of it. And then when I heard about this new medium Clubhouse, I was like, I got rid of that other medium. Let me try this new one and see what side it brings out of people and what side it brings out of me, and maybe it'll be a little bit more positive. So I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to produce a couple weekly shows on it with some friends of mine, and I'm going to see if it goes anywhere. And if it goes somewhere and it picks up listenership and it's a good place to connect with people, I'll continue with it. And if I feel like it's a time suck and a bummer, I'll be like, well, I did the due diligence on it and wasn't useful to me, so I'll move on.
Yeah, what I've found maybe like the strangest aspect of it is the trying to explain to other people what it is, and I'm like, just it's kind of like I don't know, like AM radio if you're tuning in, or like a TED Talk, or it can be more like a live podcast or like a live chat room for conversation. And I'm always like, as I've kind of used the example, is like, trust me, I'm not trying to like sell you on like multi-level marketing or something.
Right,
Like,
I know.
just like trust me on it. You want to like maybe at least check it out. And yeah, I don't know. I've found it to be, for at least for me on a personal level, it's been it's kind of helped fast track a couple of relationships with people that I had either had exchanges of emails with in the past and had a working relationship in that kind of capacity, but just having that voice to that name, I guess like a little bit more trust happens. And I don't know, I found it to be like again, like as you said with Twitter or like Facebook, a little bit more of a refreshing engagement with people.
Yeah. Well, it feels like, because it's still like semi in beta, and it's like an invite only thing right now, I think it feels more like Web 1.0, where there's not a ton of people on it. So you can kind of, it flattens the space between a lot of different people that you wouldn't normally talk to. So that feels cool. I don't think that will scale. I think once they open up to the public and once they try to scale as a company, it won't feel like that anymore. But right now, in this moment, I think probably for the next 3 to 6 months, it's really good for what you just described, which is essentially a networking tool.
Yeah, and one of the things I thought like early on that I was like, this is a glaring omission, but I've realized now I'm like, actually, I kind of like this aspect, is that it doesn't have a DM or direct message system, because what it's made me do is like actually push and get out of the app and email that person or give that person a phone call. And I think that's been a little like a subtle genius part of what's happening there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the technologies that we like the best have really well thought out limitations on them. Think about like if you're an Instagram user, when you first started using Instagram, there's all these different limitations to like you can't put links in the body of the text for a post. You can't do a lot of stuff on there, but turns out people like that. You know what I mean? People. It's a whole world of technological possibilities at this point, and at a certain point, as consumers, it turns out that we like to be constrained.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Going back to the podcast, one of the things that I think I've really appreciated about guys like you and like Chris Shiflett, as far as like the artist, the songwriter, the artist, interviewing other artists, is that, in my opinion, like there's this thing called like band talk or like songwriter talk, where Where I guess like because there is a little bit of that shared experience, even if you don't necessarily know that person as
Hmm.
like a BFF, a best friend or something like that.
Yeah.
Typically there's a more trust in that relationship from the get go. And I feel like so often y'all are able to just jump right into conversation and talk about real things, real aspects of being a musician. And like, is that something that you guys, or that you personally have been like aware of, that you realize like, oh, I'm able to talk with these people a little bit quicker than I am whenever I'm being interviewed by a journalist or someone else like that?
Yeah, I definitely think with most of the artists I talk with on there, there is like um, there is like a mutual respect going on. Not that there isn't mutual respect, or that there shouldn't be mutual respect between um, someone being interviewed and the interviewee, anyway. But yeah, I found that to be a little bit more the case. And sometimes I get people that are pitched to me who are maybe bigger artists, and their publicists will pitch them to me, and I'll take it because I want to interview the person. And when I get on the phone with them, they don't know that I'm a songwriter. All they know is that there's a 2:30 call that their publicist told them to do, and they're annoyed that they have to do it. They're on the phone with me, and so I really, one of the things I try to do is I don't try to, like, when that's the case, I don't. I really try to not like put it in their face like, well, I know what I'm doing here too. I do this as well. It's like no one needs to hear that. You know what I mean? I try to switch really quickly to just asking them questions, and not chipping in too much of my own 2 cents, because that's not what they understand the interview to be. And ultimately, I just want people to be comfortable, and I want them to go on the ride that they feel like going on. You know.
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has undoubtedly been my home away from home over the years, and has played such a vital role not only for my development as a journalist, but obviously it's been one of the foundational pieces for a lot of your favorite songwriters and bands who have made it out of the Lubbock area over the years. And of course, as a music venue, they've played such a pivotal role for a lot of your favorite bands just in general. One of my favorite parts about Blue Light is just how versatile the place can truly be. I've seen it crowded and rowdy on a Saturday night for a rock and roll band, and I've seen it dead still on a Wednesday when a legendary singer-songwriter rolls through town. What you should do is go over to bluelightlubbock.com and check out all the new merch they've added. Hats, t-shirts, both short and long sleeve. They also have hoodies and koozies, and just added some sweatshirts that are very much an homage to the college sweatshirt that John Belushi wore in Animal House. And then of course, maybe the crown jewel of their new merch is the Varsity Club style jacket in blue satin. I got one the other day, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite things I own now. And yeah, I don't know, I just love it. Anyway, you can check out all of their new merch over at bluelightlubbock.com. As always, I'll throw a link into the show notes for easy access. Okay, let's get back to the show. So this is actually that first episode that you did with Joe Ely.
Yeah.
Being a guy who has lived here in Lubbock, Texas the last decade or so, obviously Joe Ely, the Flatlanders, artists like that, they hold a certain reverie for me. I feel like there's like anyone, if there's somebody who comes from an area around you, there's a little another level of pride for that. And of course, someone like Joe Ely, kind of the epitome of West Texas. What was it like? I guess going back to that, like what was it like? In the decision to have him on as like that first guest and everything.
Well, Joe had taken me out on the road quite a bit as an opening act very early on in my career, and I'd gone out and I'd opened for the Flatlanders, and I'd opened for Joe a bunch at that point. So he had been really supportive of me, and had given me a lot of advice, had given me a lot of his time. And I'm also good buddies with his manager, who lives in Marfa, actually. Lance lives out in West Texas. And so I didn't want to annoy Joe with the request and I wanted him to have a buffer to be able to turn it down if he wanted to. Because who wants to be the first guest on any new venture? I mean, it's like what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you're starting a thing and you want me to be the first person on it? Like, no, I'm good. But I talked to Lance, his manager. I explained to him what it was. I explained to him that I was taking it seriously, that Joe was going to be framed in a really respectful way. And they, to their credit, they took a flyer on me and let me do it. And I think he's an iconic working songwriter. I think he's the epitome of a working songwriter. So I think it was auspicious that he was the first guest.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I really like that you said there. And for starters, let's talk about Joe for a second. One of the things I love so much about Joe is that, I think so often like an artist will, I guess like maybe the collective sometimes just view their early work as like the greatest work, and they plateaued or they lost touch or something like that. I think with Joe, like, he's just, he's like gotten better with age as he's gotten older, and he's like adapted and changed and morphed and reinvented himself over the course of his career. And that's something that I absolutely appreciate, that he's, he's not like stuck in trying to like create that first record or something like that. And as you said, like the working songwriter, I feel like there's so much with him as far as like being able to, take songs that were written by Butch Hancock and make them his own, but then also at the same time, just progressively get better as a songwriter and storyteller.
Yeah. I think Joe has always been, to get back to mediums, using new mediums, Joe has always been at the vanguard of that. He was starting to record digital music on a Mac in like 1982, in his home studio, like before anyone knew what a Macintosh was, much less, trying to record digitally. So he's always been down for that. He has, the main thing that I took away from touring with him is, on some of those gigs, and this is how it goes with anybody who's not like a straight up, star household name, which is your Thursday, Friday, Saturday night gigs are awesome. There's a lot of people there in a big city to see that headliner play. And then the rest of the week, you got to fill up with gigs that are on the way to those bigger gigs that are, I mean, not to talk out of school here, but, they're not the greatest, sometimes not the greatest audiences, not, the greatest gigs in the world. And even Joe Ely had those, and watching him carry himself with the same amount of poise and class in situations like that on a Tuesday night in Walla Walla versus a Friday night in Seattle, it just really taught me a lot about the equanimity that you need to carry yourself with, just as a person in life, probably in general, but certainly as a performing artist, which is like, look, man, it's there's going to be strikes and gutters, man, and that's it. And if you don't want to deal with the gutters, don't do it. If you're going to be a big baby about it, then go do an easier job. Go sell real estate or something like that. But don't complain about it. And he never did. And he always walked into every place like he owned the place. You know what I mean? And I just can't say enough about him. If there was somebody that I could be like when I grew up, it'd be Joe Ely for sure.
Yeah. Anytime I've seen him walk into a place, kind of like that epitome of cool.
Yeah.
I remember one time specifically, this is like the first time, I didn't even go up and introduce myself or anything like that, but the first time I saw him in person, it was at this time when I was up at the newspaper here, the local newspaper here in Lubbock, and I was working at a desk during the summer, and he came up the steps and was kind of like, I guess he was looking for someone, obviously way higher up than me, but
he just kind of knew, like, it was like a double take kind of thing. Like, is that Joe Ely right there? And of course it was. And, yeah, I just think like he's just kind of been the epitome of cool. And as you said, with like being on the Vanguard, the recording of that, Mac record, the B484, the high res, I guess. Yeah, everyone kind of thinks of Joe, especially early on, if they're just like playing the greatest hits, as being kind of like the rockabilly, the honky tonk kind of stuff. And man, like that Mac record that he did, it couldn't be like, further from that, yet like it's still like that aggressive edge, that attitude. And I don't know, like there's just something, as you said, very, very special about Joe and about his songwriting and how he's really adapted. One of the other things I've loved about how he's changed over the years is, I guess, like the sonic touches. If early on, there was a little bit more of that punk edge, that, as I said, the honky tonk edge. And now, like, if you've listened to his stuff in recent years, like the Panhandle Rambler record, it's almost like he's really adopted a lot of the Southwestern accents of guitars versus more of the punk rock and roll type of guitar action.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been following his heart on the sound, and I mean, he's had a career to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned about like how that interview was set up. That's something that I was going to ask. Actually, I wrote that down. How often have you like relied on already having like the relationship with that artist, and then usually do you try and reach out via their PR just to get it officially through that way?
Well, once I started doing it weekly, I needed a lot more guests, and so I opened it up to submissions from publicists. And the good thing about that is publicists, they need locations for their artists to go, because their artists are paying them to get locations. So now I have a relationship with half a dozen publicists who send me, every week they're sending me. I mean, so many people are putting out albums, man. It's crazy. But every week, they'll submit, I don't know, 30 or 40 people. So I've relied on that. In some ways, it's interesting because I can almost outsource the booking of the show to that, because I have someone whose interest it is to get their client on. So that's made it a lot easier than me just going out and cold calling people, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always find, obviously, like the going through PR, in my opinion, even if like it is somebody I consider a friend or they consider me a friend, I just go through their PR because I guess like that level of professionalism. And as you said, like if you're paying for that service, I feel like that's, you're doing just as much for them as you are like doing it for the PR, I guess, and getting all the things right as far as the schedule and everything. But yeah,
the really cool thing for me as an artist is to get to see what publicists are good and which ones are terrible at their jobs too. Like, like you get like the ones that I work with are obviously I consider to be really good, because they only take on as many clients as they can really service, and as they can like they'll write you like a handcrafted specific pitch for an artist, not like a boilerplate thing that they just plug their artist's name into. And like, you wouldn't believe how many people I get publicists writing me saying, "Hey, will you have so-and-so on the podcast? They're a big fan of your American Songwriter podcast." I'm like, all right, well, it's not gonna fly, man. It's not the name of the show. Like, it would have taken you 10 seconds to Google that, like 10 seconds. And you didn't. So.
No, that's a great point. I've learned over the years that typically the shorter the email that you get, the more like that means it's been like a little bit more personalized.
Yeah. And they'll say, hey, they can, and even if they did just listen to your show to be able to quote a few parts of it or give you something specific, even if it was like not in a genuine way, like at least it shows some semblance of respect because they took the time to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it just shows a little bit more work. It shows that you might have a more willing partner to promote the podcast episode eventually.
Yeah. How has been doing the podcast expanded your creative side as far as like just kind of doing, obviously studying some of other people's processes and their approach to the craft. Have you been able to adopt little pieces, little nuggets from these people who you've had on, and at least like try out if there's a certain way they do something?
Before I started the show, I thought that's what was going to happen, and it hasn't at all. And what I've actually taken away the most, that's changed my music the most from the podcast, is I've gotten really nifty with editing digital audio, and so now that allowed me to. It just allows me to make a lot more of my records in house now because I'm just on a weekly basis really diving in and trying to get digital audio to sound good and learning how to edit and edit comps together and stuff like that. So the only way that it's really changed my writing process is on the technical end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess like the one of our shared guests has been Robert Ellis, and he had mentioned like this way he was starting to write songs as far as like the taking, I guess, like working 5 minutes, then like 1 minute off or something like that he had read in a book. And
sounds like the most Robert thing of all time.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, like right now, I tried doing that. I tried adopting that in writing articles, and very much could not do that. I could not do this like 5 minute on, 1 minute off thing. So I ended up having to do it more like 30 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And that kind of helped a little bit, giving you a little bit of break in between and like trying to, I guess, like a little bit more of a sharp focus. But that's the first thing that popped into my head as far as like, oh, I wonder if off air or anything like that, Mr. Robert Ellis mentioned that to you as an idea, as an exercise.
No, he throws out a lot of ideas. I mean, most of them are good, man. I think I've gotten a pretty good chance to know him over the last 4 or 5 years, and I just think he's a really inspiring guy. I love Robert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that last record of his is just been one of my favorites of the last decade, easily. So yeah, he I guess he played here in Lubbock a couple of years back, and his piano went out, and so he had to like stop playing on the piano and play about half the set on guitar and like try and like figure out exactly how those chords were going. But it was an interesting night. There was also some assholes in the crowd, as you said, like the professional or the professionalism of having to play a Tuesday gig or I think this show specifically was a Monday gig here in Lubbock, but yeah. So, I was going to get you out on this last question here, and that is, how is like, I guess like your prep work as far as getting ready for an interview? Did you ever do any like prep work or like whenever you've been on, like, for example, on this podcast, you've been on the other side. Did you ever do any of that kind of stuff beforehand? And did that, I guess, influence or affect the way you were getting ready for your own podcast when you became the quote unquote, the interviewer?
Yeah, when I first started doing the podcast, I did like a lot of prep for interviews. But what I found out what was happening was it was handcuffing my ability to have just a kind of genuine and spontaneous conversation. Mm-hmm. And so I found this happy medium where you obviously have to know a certain amount about your interview subject's background just as a baseline of respect. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to know the major tentpole events and accomplishments in their career. So like, you don't want to find out in the interview that they won a Grammy 20 years ago, because then you're an asshole. You know what I mean? But I like to just know that stuff that I can kind of weave it into the interview a little bit. But I don't really, I don't like reading press releases, and I don't like knowing too much of their background, because I like to discover it with the listeners of our podcast.
Yeah, that's kind of like why I try and keep it more of the topic based on my end, at least, because especially early on as a journalist, I realized that I was thinking more about the next question I was going to ask versus what you were saying. And I guess like once I kind of realized that at some point early on, I feel like it made me a better interviewer and just obviously a better listener.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's I don't know. I feel like you're like the first podcaster I've actually ever had on the podcast. So
there you go, a mirror on a mirror.
So yeah, but yeah, well, it's been really great talking with you today.
Thanks for having me on, Thomas. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. And, yeah, I guess
All right, that is it for this one. Be sure to check out The Diving Sun by Joe Pug. Check out our presenting partners over at Desert Door, the Blue Light Live, Wild Gallery, and Hot Damn Coffee. Stop on over at the merch store and the Patreon. And yeah, I'll see y'all later this week for another episode.